Hi everyone, Lee Pacchia here, and you are watching the Markman Minute, where we talk about all things at the intersection of intellectual property law and investing. I'm joined now, as always, by Gaston Kroub. He is at his office today, and he is taking a look at the incoming papers for the upcoming trial between Merck and Gilead Pharmaceuticals. Gaston, as you were saying before, this is a pretty big case that's not on people's radars, even though the companies are quite large. Why do you think that is?
Well, I definitely agree, Lee. First of all, you have one of the things that makes it interesting is that you have two companies that are traditionally known as, branded pharmaceutical companies, meaning that they develop their own molecules and they sell them as drugs. This is really outside of the typical paradigm where you have a branded company going up against a generic. So two of the biggest names in the pharmaceutical industry, Merck, which is obviously one of the longtime giants, and then you have Gilead, which is, for many years been the darling of the biotech scene, going up against each other. It makes for a very interesting case. Add to that the subject drug is one of the biggest blockbusters of all time, with billions and billions of dollars of revenue already, booked by Gilead for it. And this makes it just a really, really interesting case and a great example of, the importance of intellectual property in the pharma space.
And this is a hepatitis-C drug, right?
Yeah, this is a hepatitis-C drug. Merck has alleged that Gilead's Solvati and Harvoni products infringe these two patents, which are picked up from ISIS. These drugs are major blockbusters, as I've mentioned, and Merck is asking for a reasonable royalty. So they're not asking for permission to sell anything of their own, even though they do have their own Hep C drug on the market. This case is all about Merck trying to get a piece of Gilead's pie with respect to these blockbusters and using their patents as the way to get there. And I took a look at the trial briefs, and it's a really interesting story that's going to probably come down as much to the credibility of the two sides and the battle of the experts as anything else. Merck's argument is basically that Gilead, at the time that Gilead's predecessor company that developed the nucleoside that ended up being the basis for the Solvati product, that was a company in New Jersey called Pharmaset, which Gilead had purchased for $11 billion. And what Merck is putting into evidence is that Pharmaset scientists knew of these patent applications at the time they were developing the underlying molecule to Solvati. And in the trial brief, there's references to documents and emails as well as testimony from former Pharmaset scientists, evidencing their awareness of these molecules, of these patent applications, excuse me. The other thing that's obviously interesting in the case is that Gilead's already admitted that its products infringe these patents. So the argument is that Gilead's making in its defense is actually a lot more nuanced. They're basically saying that they were the ones that actually invented the particular nucleoside that's the subject of the two drugs at issue, and that what Merck did was actually play a little bit of a patent game by writing claims, using these patent applications, getting claims to cover the product. So there's this whole he said, she said type of thing going on where Merck is saying Gilead knew of these patent applications and used it to further their research. And Gilead, in contrast, is saying these patent applications were just placeholders, effectively, that Merck used to try to set up this money grab. So, should be hot and heavy. There's a long list of what I'm sure are very distinguished experts that are set to testify before this jury in the Northern District of California. So it really should be a very interesting case.
Who do you think is going to win here?
This one's a tough call. I mean, usually you would say that the burden of proof that Gilead has to meet is more difficult because they want to show that the patents are invalid, which means they have to prove that by clear and convincing evidence through the presumption of validity that district courts have to apply to issued patents. At the same time, Gilead should be able to marshal some very strong evidence that they were the ones that have been credited, or in particular Pharmaset, the company that developed the drugs, have been credited as the pioneers. And the question is really going to be whether or not the jury looks at this and looks at Merck's activity in the patent office and says, wait a second, did they really just try to capture many years down the road scientific discoveries that Gilead or Gilead's predecessor company that they acquired, that they developed. So it should be interesting. The format of the trial is going to be interesting as well, so it's worth a note there. First of all, the party is going to try the validity case. If Gilead wins the validity case, then the patents are invalid and the case is over. If Merck wins and the patents are declared valid, then it's going to go to a damages phase. And considering, like I said, the royalty base, which is in the many billions of dollars, even a 10% royalty here could lead to one of the biggest patent verdicts of all time. So I think that what investors are going to be watching for are, what happens in the validity phase of the trial. If it gets to a damages phase, how big a check is Gilead going to be asked to write, pending appeal, of course. And then there's a third phase of the case where it's going to be tried to the bench. Gilead's also saying that basically Merck waited too long to sue them on these patents. So, there's a whole host of issues here. This is kicking off, later in the week, and should be continuing through the month of March. So it's going to be an interesting situation.
For sure. Awful lot of money at stake, as you said. And it also sounds like this is kind of an unusual situation to have two big pharmaceutical companies going after each other like this. Taking a second to look at what some of the ripple effects of this litigation is going to be for the rest of the pharma space. Do you see more cases like this in the future, or is this a true one-off?
No, it's a great question, Lee, and the answer is if the target's big enough, right? As we see with these drugs, Harvoni and Sovaldi, which are such huge blockbusters for Gilead. This is just one of three similar cases that Gilead has to fend off. In addition to this set of patents that Merck has, they also purchased a Cambridge biotech company called Idenix a few years ago. Mainly to get Idenix's patents and to use them against these very same drugs. At the same time, Gilead is locked in litigation with AbbVie, also around hepatitis-C patents, and AbbVie trying to get a piece. So I think we're going to see this more and more as blockbusters become really the lifeblood of these companies. They paint a big bullseye on the owner of the drug rights, and other pharmaceutical companies that are planning to compete for those drugs are much less shy than they were before about looking at their patent portfolios and saying, is there a way we can extract some royalties out of these situations?
Wild stuff. Gaston, thank you for your time today, sir.
All right, thank you, Lee.
That's Gaston Kroub from Markman Advisors. If you'd like to see more of the stuff we're working on, be sure to go check us out online. You can find us at mimesislaw.com under the IP Flow tab. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you are listening to us over iTunes, be sure to do us a favor and write us a positive review. It makes all the difference in the world. If you're watching on YouTube, do us a favor and subscribe to the channel. There's more good stuff coming. I'm Lee Pacchia. See you next week. So what's this going to mean for Harris County PD at the end of the day? They don't look great here.
The sheriff's office is not looking great here. I would imagine that if I were Sheriff Hickman, as much as it would pain me to see someone who kills one of my officers not receive the death penalty, I would be hoping that the case resolved